I'm looking kind of flat today, but whatever. Earlier this year, I could barely bench 405 pounds on a good day. Now I just benched 470 this last weekend, and I just barely missed 485, right in the lockout, my mid-range section. That's almost a 70-pound jump-ish in half a year. And it didn't happen by accident. I wanted to compete again this year. I took a sabbatical from competing for a while, and this year I decided to push my numbers hard again. So today I want to talk to you and teach you exactly what I've done from my programming changes, my technique. I'm going to have a cue for you today that a lot of you probably haven't heard of that's going to blow up your bench press a little bit more, especially if you're stuck at the lockout portion. And I don't have a script today. My last video, 41 minutes long, was heavily scripted. I read off of it as best I could. And I don't know, I just have more fun when it's a little more off the cuff and authentic, I guess. That one was very like technical and evidence-based. And this one, I just want to talk to you about how I got a PR on bench. And my caveat, as always, this is subjective to me, right? Like, this is just what I've done. What I've done may not necessarily work for you. I weigh 260 pounds right now. That's 15 pounds less than when I was competing pretty seriously, and I was hitting like 447, I think, in competition. I think I hit 441 in competition. And I want to make another video about how I've lost weight these last couple months and gained strength. I haven't necessarily gained muscle, but I've gained a little bit of strength. And, I could do a blood test one day, but friends, I am 100% natural. And that's why I want to do USAPL this year. I'm only deadlifting and squatting on a power bar. USAPL is a drug-tested federation. I will forever be a natural athlete. Heart issues run in my family, and I don't want to take that chance ever. But honestly, I can boil it down to I'm actually getting at least 200 grams of protein for the first time in my life. I've consistently only ever gotten like 120 when I was at my fattest. And yeah, getting enough protein actually helps. Who would have thought? So what kind of happened last year is, I think it was last July, I was up at a different gym in the upstate here in South Carolina, and we did a competition, and I think I hit like 420 something pounds, 428, I want to say, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. I'll have to take a look. I'll put it in the video. That was about 20 pounds under my heaviest bench of all time. Before that, I had benched 447 in the gym and 441 in competition. And I weighed a lot more back then, right? I was 125 kilos, so right about that 275 is what I weighed when I did that. And so I took a little hiatus or sabbatical from competing, but I did like just a fun competition last summer, hit like 420-ish. And then I decided to play men's rugby this last fall, and all my lifts shot down. I could barely train, practice in games, and I just put powerlifting to the side. Though if I could train in the gym, I would probably hit like 350 just to, stay strong or whatever. Once that season was over, I was like, I just kind of want to start strength training pretty heavy again. Ego reasons, honestly. I think a lot of guys are like this. You hit 225 for the first time, you want to start hitting it all the time. You want that to become your floor, right? Like the lift you can do on any given day. I did the same thing when I hit 315. No matter what, I just started spamming. It's not the smartest thing to do, but ego drives us a lot. And so I started spamming 315. So I did the same with 405 this last fall, where I was like, you know what? Every bench day, I'm going to get to 405 pounds. And that'll just be my top single. I'm going to do a single at 405. And I'm going to do my back downs. Now, I would not recommend this, to be honest. This is like almost purely ego driven. I hadn't even decided to start competing yet. So I didn't even care about programming right or exercise selection. I was just going to do, I was going to hit 405, do my back downs, maybe do a targeted accessory, right? So to me, the mid-range was almost always my weak point. And I talk about that in my, bench press accessories video, so please check that out. So what ended up happening this year, started my YouTube channel, and I started thinking like, I kind of want to compete again. I moved and I couldn't play rugby anymore. So I was like, if I'm going to compete again, I want to do it right. And I know how to program. I just made a whole video on periodization, so check that out as well. And I was overcoming a little bit of shoulder injury or pain from rugby, and have an ankle sprain that I deal with. And I talk about that in my last video too, so please check that out as well. I was like, okay, we're gonna do this right. I want to hit 450 pounds in competition come August, and that was my main goal, and I've surpassed that. So when I first started training at this new gym I'm going to with the calibrated plates, I kind of just did the same thing for a little bit. I'm gonna hit 405, that's my floor. If I can push that a little bit for my warm-up top single, I will. And then I do my back downs. And then I started actually following my own advice. I started programming smarter and doing weak point targeting, right? One of the first changes I made is I stopped doing touch and go altogether. For powerlifting, you don't do touch and go, right? You just don't. Every variation, every exercise I do, from regular bench press, Larson press, Spoto press, two board press, I'm adding what I consider a competition pause as best I can. You know, maybe sometimes that's only like a 1 count, but I try to at least go for a 2 count, you know, down, 1, 2, up. And my friends have told me the USAPL judges tend to give long pauses. So as I get closer and closer to competition, my top sets will probably look like almost like a 3 to 4 count almost. I think for me, the best change I made was just doing a ton of Spoto press. I would just do my top set, some back downs to, you know, get everything competition specific, and then I would go heavy on Spoto press. And I bench twice a week. So that's day 1. Day 2 of bench, which is my 3rd day of training in the week, is I do the same thing. I do a competition single, but I do it a lot less than day 1. So if I did like 410 pounds on day 1, I might do like 405 to 385 on day 2, right? I don't want to cause a lot of fatigue. I'm just trying to practice the bench press. And then I would do, you know, some Larson press, usually, probably like a little bit of a tempo just to get that mind muscle connection. And I was dealing with a ton of shoulder pain. So I was just doing some targeted accessories to deal with that, like very slow and controlled single arm dumbbell press that was pretty light. And I could see on my left side, super easy. On my right side, very shaky. So I just started doing little things to address that. And what I'm trying to nail is you have to choose accessories that target your sticking points and learn how to progress weight well. And so what I do when I go to the gym is I have a target range, right? So a lot of people do percentage-based training and they do RPE. You can kind of do both, right? Like, you know, like, okay, today I want to hit an RPE 8 single. That could look like 408 pounds to 425. So before I go to 408 or 425, I'm probably going to hit like 390, for instance. And based how that bar speed moves, if it's super fast, then I go based off the bar speed and kind of subjectively how I feel. Sometimes I don't feel good, but the bar speed is showing something different. And sometimes I feel great, but I'm getting a bit of a slowdown. So you take that objectivity of the bar speed and the subjectivity of your RPE, and then that should decide where you're hitting in that target range. So if bar speed was super great and you feel great, maybe even push the target range by like 5%. You know, maybe less, but you know what I mean. I wanted to tell you about one new cue that I learned. You know, I talked to my powerlifting client about this and he said he had heard it before. Personally, I never heard it before. In the past, my lockout was the worst part, you know, mid-range and lockout. It kind of would fail at either point. And technically that's still where I feel. I failed in the mid-range on 485. It used to also be sometimes the lockout, like I could not get that last like 2 inches or so. And so one cue I started thinking to myself was, well, what is this movement actually doing? Yes, I'm pressing the weight off of my chest, but what is also happening? What's also happening is I'm pressing my elbows together, right? So off the chest and elbows are coming together. So the cue I started thinking about in my head was, I want to pretend like I have magnets glued to the inside of my elbows. And as I'm pressing up, those magnets want to come together. You can also think of it like maybe a rubber band is attached between your elbows. And you can actually do that with a resistance band in training and kind of see how it feels. It's sort of like using a slingshot for bench press, which I personally have never used, but I think that's kind of the point of it, is it alleviates the lockout a little more, basically forcing you to bring your elbows together. So if you can think of that cue in your head and practice it with an empty barbell before you do that, before you bench, I think it's gonna make a big difference for those that suffer at the lockout. I just want you to think, you're not just pressing up, you're pressing up. And about that mid-range, the only cue I'm really thinking of is elbows together. I don't know the anatomy behind it, but I'm activating way more of my tricep, probably like the long head. Somebody, you know, tell me what that is. I should probably like know that. And I'm also feeling way more of my rear delt get activated. Seriously, try it with an empty barbell. Try it with just as you're sitting here watching this video. Pretend like you're pressing off your chest, just straight up, right? Yeah, like, yeah, you feel in your forearms and your triceps, but now pretend you're halfway. Think nothing more than elbows together. You're gonna feel way more of that tricep getting activated, and you're gonna feel way more of that rear delt getting activated. And what I love about powerlifting is, I've been benching for years and years and years, and every now and then I learn a new cue like this that shoots my numbers up pretty well. Next, I made a technical adjustment for USAPL. So in the USPA and a lot of other powerlifting federations, you can have your feet, feet have to stay on the ground, but you can have your toes on the ground and your heels pointed up. And I've done that for forever. For me, that helped me like get set in my arch, right? I talk about that in my bench cues video, is like how to set your arch, how to get tight. But in USAPL, your heels have to be on the ground. And I always thought that would be a detriment to me because it just didn't feel natural. But I started practicing with that for USAPL. And I don't know, for some reason, it just works better for me, and maybe that's like my anatomy and my limb lengths or whatever. It helps me set my arch better, just straight up. Like I'm setting the arch with heels on the ground instead of up, or sometimes I set the arch, then put my heel on the ground, and I just feel like my back arching just another inch compared to just having my heels up. This is also improving my leg drive, because I used to just press off my toes, and that became very naturally to me because, I played football and rugby, and in contact sports, you're kind of like on your toes, ready to go a lot. But powerlifting is a little different, and I started pressing off of my heel more. And if you think in powerlifting, like on the squat and the deadlift, you're pressing off of like your midfoot, more of your heel than your front foot usually. Some people say like, it should be evenly distributed, but generally speaking, about the midfoot. And for most people, when they squat, they have bad mobility and their heels come up. And when they learn how to put their heel and shift their weight a little further back, they're driving a lot more power. So that's exactly what happened to me on bench press. Is I started driving with my heel, and I can feel that leg drive just work better. I don't really know how to explain it. I just feel more powerful when I, use that leg drive momentum to get it off my chest. So give that a try, even if you don't do USAPL. All right, next, this is something I've been dabbling with in my head. So traditionally, after, I do my top set, my back downs, and some kind of targeted staking point exercise like Spoto press, Larson press, whatever. Then I get into my accessories. You do your curls, you do your tricep push downs, you do your lateral raises, a bunch of rear delt flies, whatever. And I typically go, or have gone really hard on those, like RPE 8. That means like 2 reps in reserve. So I'm pushing, and that last, rep kind of just looks nice and slow, right? And I get a lot of fatigue from that, and I'm huffing and puffing. And now I've been thinking, take a rear delt fly, for instance. Right now, as I'm increasing my bench press, that's my main goal. I'm not trying to grow my rear delts. I'm trying to keep my bench heavy. That means enough stimulus to keep my shoulders healthy and not fry myself. A lot of people just think as you progress in periodization, all your lifts get heavier. If I'm training for bench press, then my bench is getting heavier, my Spoto press is getting heavier, and then all my accessories are getting heavier. I'm pushing harder on, curls. I'm pushing harder on the rear delt flies. And now I'm thinking, almost inversely, I think some of those non-specific accessories should be getting easier over time. I should be training less hard on those. And here's my reason why. It does kind of boil down to the concept of specificity I talk about in my periodization video, but getting a heavy bicep curl or heavy rear delt fly is not specific to my big bench press goal. It's just not, right? I'm not training for that. Having strong rear delts helps, but if I'm pushing to RP 8 or 9, or sometimes even 10 by accident, that is causing cumulative fatigue that is going to bleed into my next training session. It's going to bleed into my recovery. So now my body isn't just recovering my chest, my front delts, and my triceps. My body is recovering my rear delts too, and my biceps. It's not, my total recovery isn't good enough for my next bench session. So I have been limiting my accessories to RPE 5, so about 5 reps in reserve. And honestly, it's worked out really well. I get a nice, decent pump without gassing myself. I keep my shoulders and my joints and my ligaments healthy. It's just a little bit of stimulus. I'm preventing atrophy, so they're not really getting smaller per se. I'm flushing the area with blood and nutrients and keeping everything nice and healthy. but I'm not causing fatigue towards my main goals. So something to think about as you progress in periodization. You probably want to start tapering some accessories that aren't specific to your goal. Increasing my curl strength isn't specific to any goal in powerlifting I have. It's something I like to do because I think stronger biceps do help your bench, inadvertently. So that's all I really wanted to talk about in this video. Nice and short. Basically, how did I bring up my bench press? I made 405 pounds earlier this year, the floor, right? No matter what, I was going to do that. And I don't think, maybe that wasn't optimal, but that's what I did. And I think that in a way helped me. And instead of just, spamming accessories and different bench exercises, I targeted my real weaknesses. So the pause, the mid-range, and the lockout. I changed how I cue things. So maybe you need to start thinking what cue could help you on your bench press. Maybe it's the magnet rubber band thing. Maybe it's the idea to drive your shoulders through the bench. I talk about that in my rear bench press tips and cues video. I modified my heel technique a little bit by just pressing my heels through the floor, and I stopped letting my accessories steal from my main lifts. Strength and increasing your 1 rep max isn't about finding the perfect program. It's about getting brutally honest about what's holding you back and doing something about it. So drop a comment with your current bench goal, how you're getting there, what's holding you back. And as always, please give me a like, a subscription, leave a comment. The more you engage, the more it pumps the video to like-minded people like us. So I'd really appreciate it. As I'm recording this, we're just about to cross over into 600 subscribers, which is way ahead of schedule. I think by the end of the year, we're definitely going to reach 1,000. So I'm super excited for that. Thank you guys very much for the support. Until next time.